I'm currently driving to Lake Charles, Louisiana to document one particular grave. And yes, I'm eating lunch while driving, normal thing people do in my country. I'm also going to meet up with a few of my subscribers too. My initial plan was to document the first lady to ever be executed in the state of Louisiana. But things got uneasy real quick. While exploring the cemetery, my subscribers noticed a few open tombs and saw human bones exposed to nature's elements. Well, here I am. I made it to Orange Grove Cemetery in Lake Charles, Louisiana. The cemetery doesn't look that bad from the sky, but once you start exploring it, you'll see things you wish you never saw. We'll get into that a little later in the video. First, let's talk about Toni Jo Henry, also known as Anna B. Rice McQuiston. Toni Jo Henry was born in Shreveport, Louisiana on January 3rd, 1916. She was 3 of 5 children. By the time Toni was 6 years old, her mother died of tuberculosis in 1922. She left her dad to go live with her grandmother. Her father quickly remarried and requested that Toni come back to live with him and his new wife. Toni was very unhappy living with them. At the age of 13, she got her first part-time job working at a macaroni factory. Unfortunately, she was dismissed by her boss after finding out she had family history of tuberculosis and thought it was contagious. Her father got upset after finding out she lost her job and couldn't help assist with the family living expenses. So he ended up doing really bad things to Toni. She ended up running away and starting a new life as an adult star on the streets to pay for her bills. She also ended up getting addicted to a certain type of medication and drinking. Toni ended up getting arrested many times for doing these things. By the age of 23, she fell in love with a man named Claude Henry in Austin, Texas. He was a criminal and a prize fighter. Before officially getting married, Clyde went to San Antonio, Texas to go to a bar to get drunk. He got into a fight with a man, knocking him out, not knowing what was to come of him and his future. Toni and Claude ended up getting married on November 25th, 1939, and had their honeymoon in South California. When they both returned from their honeymoon, Claude was arrested for the murder of a former off-duty San Antonio police officer. Toni attended court every day supporting her husband. When he was sentenced to 50 years in prison, Toni lost it and screamed, "I will find a way to get you out." Toni later went on record saying she never suffered this much pain in her life when her husband was sentenced to 50 years in prison at Huntsville Prison in Texas. Toni was scrambling around for ideas on what to do. She first needed money and someone to help her out. She reached out to Arkie Burks, one of her old criminal friends, for help. Toni and Archie needed some money, so they began robbing local places in eastern Texas. Both Toni and Archie wanted to rob a bank in Stuttgart, Arkansas, but before doing that, they needed to steal a car. A few days later, Toni and Archie made it to Lake Charles, Louisiana, strategizing a plan to get their getaway car. On February 14th, 1940, Toni did everything in her power to look sexy, hoping to hitch a ride. A man named John P. Coway was delivering a Ford coupe to his friend, not knowing what was about to happen. Josie pulled over to pick up Toni. Archie came out from the bush with a gun and told the man to strip naked and to get into the trunk of his car. After driving a few miles down the road, Toni stopped the car and opened the trunk to let out Joseph. Archie and Toni dragged his body over a razor-sharp fence and ended up cutting Joseph's skin all over his body. Joseph was begging for his life and talking about his family. Toni didn't care. She was loading her gun and she killed him. They both left his body there. As they drove off. While driving, Arkie had second thoughts about this. Both of them started to fight, and they end up splitting ways. Toni returned to Shreveport, Louisiana to lay low for some time. She ended up telling her aunt that she murdered somebody. Her aunt's brother was a state trooper police officer. She told him to go talk to Toni about what she did. She ended up getting interviewed by the Shreveport police. Toni was arrested and sentenced to multiple trials. Her first trial was held on March 27th through the 29th, 1940, at this courthouse. During the first trial, the jury found both Toni and Archie guilty and sentenced death by hanging. Toni blamed Archie for killing Joseph that night. This went on for 6 hours that day. Toni requested a new trial, and it was appealed as the media was all over this story. Things were not going to plan, and she knew she was closer to getting the death sentence. Her second trial began sometime in February of 1941. Archie testified against Toni. Nothing changed, as it was the same as the first trial. Her second appeal was granted just as the first was. The final trial was in January 1942. Just like the first two trials, she was still found guilty. Toni did everything in her power to grant another trial, but she was cut off. She was convicted and sentenced to death on November 28, 1942, in the basement of the Calcasieu Courthouse in Lake Charles, Louisiana. Miss Jo Henry was the first and only woman in the state of Louisiana to ever be executed in the electric chair. She was pronounced dead at 12:12 p.m. and brought to Orange Grove Cemetery in Lake Charles, Louisiana to be buried. Her friend Archie was sentenced to death on March 23, 1943 in the same electric chair as Toni. As for Toni's husband, Claude, he grew physically sick after the news about Toni. He was granted hardship parole in 1945. He returned back to his old habits of getting drunk and getting into fights at bars. Claude's time came to an end when he got in a fight with the wrong person. He was shot in self-defense, which ended up killing Claude. So while exploring this part of the cemetery, my subscribers noticed bones and skulls. I'm bringing awareness by showing this to the public. Normally I don't take pictures of this, but it's something that needs to be seen and fixed ASAP. How would you feel if this was your loved one's bones laying out like this? Who's in charge? What else is running through your mind? What other questions do you want to know? Why? Why is it like this? No matter what the situation is, this should never have happened in the first place. Anyways, I'm gonna let you think about what I just said and why this is still here. If you want to see any of my pictures or the behind the scenes, check out my socials, links in the video description down below. And I'll see you in the next video.